It's time for another best of 5 series in StarCraft 2, and what I got for you today is a Zerg versus Terran played between two professional gamers. Spawning here in game number 1 on Catalyst LE in the top left corner of the map and playing with the blue Zerg drones, we have none other than Serral. And his opponent spawning in a cross position and playing with the red Terran SCVs, we have none other than uThermal. Now, uThermal, of course, a player who's been around for a couple of years right now, definitely considered to be one of the very best, if not the very best, Terran players in Europe. This guy is an absolute monster, and while statistically speaking, over the last couple of years, he's been playing probably like 90% plus bio in the Terran versus Zerg matchup. Recently, over the last couple of months, I've been seeing him play a ton of Mech, just because it seems to be a lot more powerful recently, and he's definitely been picking up some of those mechanical-based unit compositions as well, so we'll have to keep an eye out throughout this series to see what he decides to go for in this particular matchup. Serral, on the other hand, he's one of those guys who's been probably around for about a year and a half or so in the professional level of play, but he is an absolute monster. In particular, over the last couple of months, he seems to be absolutely unstoppable. I actually just looked it up. Statistically speaking, and obviously statistics can only really take you so far, but statistically speaking, Serral is currently the rank 1 player on the planet. Now, of course, the new multiplayer patch was only recently released. He hasn't really competed against the top-of-the-line Koreans recently either. But the guy's an absolute monster. He's definitely one of the players to watch out for in 2018 and, the years to come. I recently actually met him a couple of times as well at WESG and then also at BlizzCon. Really nice dude. One of the things actually to keep in mind as well is that compared to some of the other professional gamers, he's actually a couple of years younger. Like, this guy is definitely not very old at all, and I think that he has a bright future ahead of him in StarCraft 2 because he's already so very powerful. So Serral, definitely a name to watch out for over the next couple of years because he already seems to be on an absolute tear. And I mean, being statistically the rank 1 definitely does make it a pretty good point for you to be in right now already, with 2018 just starting up. Of course, the tournament season for the WCS and whatnot will still have to begin, and I think that Serral is going to be one of the top-level contenders. Regardless, though, we did see Serral just now opening up with that spawning pool first. It was scouted with that very first SCV right here by the Terran player, and the SCV will have to pay for that information with its life, but apparently the Zerglings decided to hang out in the corner, and while originally they may have meant to try to snipe that SCV that's built in the command center on the low ground, because of that scouting information, uThermal decided to leave that Reaper here as well, just to make sure that he doesn't really miss out on anything. Quick 1-1-1 based opener right here by uThermal. He's going to be going for that single barracks into the single factory and now also that single starport. I was wondering if he's going to be following this up as well at Tech Lab. Not seeing that one just yet. He's actually currently rallying a Marine here just to pick up an Overlord if it was indeed going to be flying off in this direction, but it turns out that is not going to be the case. In the meanwhile, on the other side of the map, we see Serral taking that third hatchery here already. He's got a nice little bit of creep spread going on already as well, and this is one of the things we have been seeing Zerg players focus on a ton over the last few months in particular. Very heavy queen play in the early part of the game to really push that creep spread, and if the Terran player does not halt it, it's gonna cost them a ton of scans to eventually kill it later on into the game, and creep spread has sort of become like the answer to a lot of early game timing attacks as well, because just simply spreading the creep makes it so much easier for Zerglings, Banelings, and then also of course the Queens to join the engagement and to simply just wipe away all of these Terran units. Overlord now, however, apparently is being sacrificed right here to the Blood God. It's gonna try and figure out exactly what it is he's going up against. You will be able to see right now that a factory, of course, is getting a couple of these units out already, a couple of the Hellions coming out 2 by 2, but here he now also will notice the fact that there is going to be that Cloak Banshee upgrade, as well as, of course, the Banshee here underway as well. This may actually be a distraction. I wouldn't be surprised if uThermal decides to cancel it right here, but for now it looks like he's going to stick with that upgrade and just simply continue onwards, while also going for that medevac drop here with those Hellions in the main base. Cheeky little play here by uThermal. The nice thing about this kind of build, the 1-1-1 style, is that it allows you to transition towards a third command center rather early as well, but he's going to be sending harassment units all over the map. Hellions, however, did just get spotted here as well by the Zerglings, and now also, of course, that Overlord in the corner. Pretty important pickup because he doesn't really want to... Well, he's actually got to be careful. There we go. Whew. close one there. I thought for a second he forgot picking up the Hellions. At the same time, though, a couple of Hellions are also making their way towards the third base. One of them will also end up exploding, but apparently one of the wheels just barely intact, and I guess another one was a little further out. And while the Lynx, once again, will have to go after the Hellions inside of the main base, so far, Serral seems to be on point. Not really missing a beat just yet. Double armory now also being followed up here by uThermal, and he's also going to go for that third command center at the third command center location, at the third base right here. So apparently he's feeling confident enough that it will not get sniped. Double armory is one of those things that we see quite a bit more actually in the European and like the North American scene of StarCraft 2. A lot of the Korean pros actually really do like their play, and here by the way we do see that Banshee finally picking up a kill as well. But in the Korean scene we see a lot more players focusing on a single armory instead. It's mostly like a preference kind of thing, I suppose. Obviously one armory doesn't cost you nearly as much as two armories, and while that does allow you a lot more pushing potential, the double armory just simply makes your maxed out army so much more powerful. But usually seeing double armory at this point in the game does indicate that it is going to be a little bit more of a passive style here for the Terran player, and I wouldn't be surprised if uThermal is going to try and sit back and see if he can just simply max out on a very, very powerful mech-based army. Serral now just finished up that third base here that was morphed into a lair, and I wonder what kind of tech he's going to be going for. Already getting himself a carapace upgrade right now as well. Hellions still going to try and deal with the Zerglings here at the front. Apparently one of the Lynx managed to sneak behind that wall, but neither player really dealing any kind of critical damage, and apparently Serral now wants to transition towards that fourth hatchery here in the top right corner of the map as well. Handful of roaches now currently being produced. Apparently there's also still more and more Banshees joining this map. I highly doubt that he's going to be able to deal any kind of serious damage with this, but already uThermal is going to be going for the double upgrades at this point in the game, and we see Serral making that switch towards the Hydralisk-based play. I love this mutual respect, though, that we are seeing out of both of these guys, right? Like, neither of them is really taking any kind of critical damage whatsoever, but neither of them is really taking any kind of risks either. They're simply playing it safe and sound, and while a couple of drones, once again, will end up dying, this is definitely nothing all too insane. 2 right there in total. Overseer will be joining in, and while it's gonna be 4 throughout this map, and apparently a couple of Lynx now also are moving into that third base location here of the Terran player, they're gonna be able to pick up a couple of units here and there, but it's nothing game ending by any stretch of the imagination. Now whenever a Terran player doesn't really deal any damage though in the earlier part of the game, that usually indicates that Zerg is gonna be in a mighty fine position. Look at that. Already 72 workers at this point. More and more drones are coming in as well, and while Terran is now following this up with the very popular double medevac into double Thor production here as well, and he is indeed going to try and load these Thors into the medevacs here shortly and maybe do a little bit of harassment there, and there we do indeed see them loaded up into it. I wonder how this is going to play out. Because already at this point, right, it's 75 Harvesters here for Zerg. We see that Roach Hydra-based composition, something we would see a lot, of course, during the Wings of Liberty era. One of these Banshees will end up falling to the Queen, but the Queen also now gets roasted, apparently, and with that, it's gonna go down. The medevacs are now heading towards the left-hand side of the map. I think they may very well be looking to boost into that main base here of the Zerg player. So far, there's really not all that much here available just yet. And Hellions and Hellbats are now also making their way here to the right-hand side of the map to potentially do a little bit of damage here, while the Zerg player is going to be occupied in the main base from a couple of these stores. And there we go. Look at them dealing so much damage. One of these Queens immediately picked up, and as soon as the Hellions see a little bit of wiggle room, they're going to try and move into that fourth base, but nice response time right there by the Zerg player, making sure that it doesn't deal any kind of critical damage. And once again, while they're more or less testing the waters, we are getting to a point where both players are just simply maxing out. uThermal will be maxing out on a very powerful mech-based composition, whereas we see that composition for the Zerg player currently focused primarily on Roaches and Hydralisks. Usually a little bit of a risky style to go for, just because Roaches and Hydras are very supply-heavy and can be a little bit scary as well. But the Hive is just about to finish up, and Serral will be able to add in, for example, something called the Viper. And Vipers, of course, are pretty much the gold standard right now for countering Mech. We did see a slight little nerf recently to the what are they called? The Swarm Hosts. making it just a little bit more difficult to actually get them to work properly. But right now, this Hellion will figure out that the hive is already done. We immediately see 4 Vipers queued up here as well. And while the upgrades are a little late here for Serral, he doesn't really take any kind of critical damage whatsoever. And really, like, in total, only 10 workers went down in this game, even though both players have been going for continuous harassments here. Fort base now taken, though, and uThermal apparently is gonna find himself in a little bit of trouble, as there is a lot of Zerg now trying to move forward. Keep in mind, though, there is no Viper available just yet, and that does indeed mean that this is gonna be an army that will be easily warded away for now. Creep spread is getting a little bit out of hand already, though, and the Vipers are accumulating a bunch of energy. Gotta be careful, this can really go either way very, very quickly. Terran's already got that 5th base, or that 4th base right now, secured with a planetary fortress as well. Siege tanks and Thors, of course, extremely potent too. This is gonna all come down to the engagement that we will see coming in just a minute or two from now. We now also see the Dropper Lords actually coming in, and I like this move a lot by Serral. Rather than just transitioning towards, for example, more and more higher tech units, like say, for example, the Brute Lord play, instead he's gonna be hanging back here for a while and do maybe a bit of counter drop harass here as well, as soon as his opponent decides to make a move across the map. And speaking of which, I think that the Zerg is actually going to be the one that will make the engagement first. Here we go. Couple of the Yanks immediately being pulled forward. A lot of Siege Tank and Thors are going down in just a matter of seconds, but there's still a lot of Terran army. 191 supply versus 193. Zerg desperately trying to engage here against these big, massive units for the Terran player, and apparently with that push going way in favor of the Terran player, all of a sudden he is smelling blood and he wants to go for the engagement. Hellions now also roasting away at a couple of those Hydras. They end up falling in just a matter of seconds, and I think that this base will be forced to get on out of there. And while apparently the Overlords are trying to do a little bit of drop harass, there's really not that much available for them to drop off right now, as all of the Zerg army is needed here near the main bases. Vikings, though, are going to be able to deal quite a bit of damage to all of these Vipers. Nicely yanked there, trying to make sure that these units are going to not be able to shoot away at the Vipers for free. Queens will probably be forced off the line as well, but I think that uThermal is going to try and close this game out right here, right now, securing himself more and more bases, trying to make sure that the Zerg does not get any kind of time here to recuperate his losses. And so far, this seems to be a really solid choice by him, but there's still a lot of Zerg available. Here we go. Blinding Clouds are indeed going down. Zerg is going for this massive surround all over the Terran's army, and the question is, did uThermal go a little bit too deep on creep, or really have enough forces to clean this one up right now? A very close engagement, but I think that this just barely goes in favor right here of the Terran player, and Serral is forced to GG out. uThermal picks up game number 1. Beautiful game number 1 there by uThermal, definitely showing Serral what he is made of. I think that going for the double armory right there was the perfect choice, because once he managed to crush his opponent's force, and actually hold that thought, Serral here in game 2, he's gonna go for that pool first at 12 supply. Ooh, cheeky. Anyway, I think going for the double armory was really smart, because right when uThermal managed to, you know, crush that Zerg force, all of a sudden he found himself with a massive army that he could just push for the victory with. That was very well played by uThermal there in game number 1, but in game number 2, he's gonna go up against a Zerg player who's going for a little bit of cheese, and I think that this may very well be the command center push as well. Now, we are currently on Abyssal Reef LE, and uThermal's 1-0 ahead. Oh no! uThermal, I think he's gonna go for command center first. Yeah, he's gonna go for a command center first. Oh, that is really unfortunate here for uThermal. He's 1-0 ahead, right? Serral definitely reading his opponent like a book. Noticing that he's currently 1-0 behind, he knows that there's a good chance his opponent is going to be going for that command center on the low ground just to push that victory more. And Serral, wow, he's putting all of his eggs in one basket, right? You got to keep in mind that the counter to this build that Serral is going for, and by the way, this is going to be a Ravager Rush, but the counter that Serral is going for right now is just simply an SCV Scout, right? If uThermal sends out that SCV Scout early on into the game, this build can be shut down very easily with Cyclones and maybe even like a Banshee or maybe even a Siege Tank. kind of depending on what uThermal wants to go for. But at this point, uThermal is going for the command center on the low ground, going for an extremely greedy build. So he went depot, command center, barracks, and then double gas. Very, very greedy build right here by the Terran player in blue. No SCV scout, no nothing. And Serral apparently knows a little bit more than I do, because he may very well be able to just simply, you know, crush his opponent here with a bit of a build order victory. I like this a lot, though. I mean, when you're playing a best of 3 series, or best of 5 series even, you have to make sure that you at the very least mixing a little bit, you have to make sure you mix in a little bit of cheese here and there. I mean, if you're just going to play a very predictable style, it will never make you a tournament victor, right? I mean, maybe that's not necessarily true either, because we see Innovation playing the same styles over and over and over again, and he's one of the most successful players of all time. But I do think that, in general, in order to become a tournament victor, you have to make sure that you mix in a little bit of cheese here and there as well, just because it makes you a very unpredictable player. And while right now, uThermal knows that this may have been a spawning pool first, he doesn't quite know about the early, the timing of it right there just yet, as he will be called with a couple of ravages here. Great reaction time actually right there by uThermal. However, he's already at a bit of a tough situation, because there's Ravagers moving across the map. This Overlord is now also going to come into position, and those Biles are going to hit all 3 of the buildings there all at once. SCV's already falling, although nice micro here back and forth though, trying to get this around here on the Ravagers. But so far, I can't help but wonder that there's just simply a little bit too many Zerg units available here. Once again, continued corrosive Biles dealing damage to all of the structures here at the front. One Cyclone is currently being produced, but I think that Serral has found himself a nice little build order victory, reading his opponent like a book. And while apparently these units do end up getting surrounded, there's still just simply so much Zerg here available though. 17 SCVs already dying. There are of course 2 orbital commands done, so if somehow, some way uThermal managed to hold on, he's gonna have the double mules coming in. He can lose essentially all of the SCVs if he needs to, but it's just continued pushing right now by the Zerg player here. Ravagers are coming in continuously throughout the map, and while another one will just be about to finish and a few more SCVs end up dying, I think that uThermal may have very well found himself in a bit of a tricky position, because while he will have himself a couple of those Cyclones out as well, he will be forced to repair up that factory if he doesn't want to. Oh man, this is too many. Look at that. Yeah, he's going to be forced to repair that factory if he doesn't want to lose it. And right now, Serral is smelling blood. Target firing down all of those Cyclones. And GG will be forced here in game number 2. Such a cheeky little play there by the Zerg player in game 2, but really smart as well, because he all of a sudden evened up the score, and momentum is a very big deal when it comes to these professional series, right? Right now, for example, I highly doubt that uThermal is going to feel confident enough to once again go for a command center on the low ground, right? Going for that super greedy play, I don't think it's going to be in the books anymore here for our Terran player. Now, the next map is going to be Neon Violet Square. And of course, we do see the Zerg right here in the top left corner of the map, and the Terran player in the bottom right-hand corner. Now, this is one of those series that was played during the WESG as well. And while I tried watching as many of the series as I could while I was there, and of course I ended up casting a lot of the series there as well, this is another one of the series that I sadly did not get to watch nearly as closely as I expected I would be able to. It's actually kind of funny. Whenever you go to any kind of gaming event, I found myself oftentimes having a much easier time just simply watching the games closely at home, because of course a lot of the games just simply get live streamed, right? And usually if you're watching at home, it's much easier to focus on the game, whereas if you're in the crowd, it's actually kind of tricky to keep your focus and your attention on the screen and make sure that you keep track of exactly what's happening in the series. So I really do like the fact that the replay pack was given out so very rapidly, making this a much easier thing to do. Like, for example, a lot of the tournaments, in particular like Korean tournaments, never really give out their replay packs, making it rather tricky to study the replays and whatnot. But so far, for all 3 races, I've been learning new build orders already just because of this replay pack right here, as you can really look at all of the specifics just by simply loading up the replays and checking out exactly what it is the players are going for. And I mean, hopefully that's going to be able to improve my own gameplay and maybe my cast a little bit here and there as well. Regardless though, Serral once again opening up with a very, very safe build. Interestingly enough, Serral actually favors the spawning pool first quite often. Not really necessarily going for the hatchery first, that is so very common. he may be expecting uThermal to go for a little bit of counter cheese. For example, uThermal, he's got some of the best micro when it comes to bio-based units in the entirety of this game, and I don't think anyone would be all too surprised if he mixes in, like, for example, like a 3-rack Reaper rush, but apparently so far in this series, he's not going for anything along those lines. He's just, once again, following this up with a very safe reactored barracks play, and then also following it up with a factory here too, after getting that Reaper out, and then also, of course, going for the Marine. And once again, we see him trying to make his way back home. Couple of links now on the other side of the map. They're going to try and nibble away at the SCV here. May be able to do a little bit of damage, but I think with that second SCV already joining in this engagement, the Zerglings won't get all too much done. And this is one of those ways that Zerg players can deal a lot of damage early game, but most of the time they won't. And that's kind of like a theme in a lot of professional level of play. I mean, oftentimes there's a lot of potential for a lot of damage to be done, but many a times there's not really going to be any damage whatsoever. For example, right here, right, opening up with that spawning pool first allows Zerg to send 2 Zerglings across the map very early on. And if these Zerglings manage to kill the SCV that's building the command center, uThermal would have actually been supply blocked a little while later, because he banks on this command center finishing up to not get supply blocked. So you can imagine that if the Terran player would have gone for a single Reaper, sent that one across the map, and then straight into a reactor and a factory, and he skipped out on the Marine, the Zerglings would have been able to kill the command center building SCV, and all of a sudden uThermal would be in a terrible state. That's kind of how a lot of these games go. There's really like minor little things that can absolutely throw you off your game, and both of these players are trying to abuse that to the max. I love it. Instead of like sacrificing the very first Reaper, for example, and just simply getting, you know, a little bit of scouting information, uThermal keeps it alive to make sure that he can scout a little while later. And right now, for example, he knows that there's a group of links out. So maybe uThermal doesn't want to necessarily send out these Hellions right away. It's one of those things that is very popular at the highest level of play, but pretty tricky as well to figure out if you're just a, you know, a casual observer of the game. So I'm trying to make sure that I explain roughly what's going on here to the best of my abilities. Regardless though, Serral playing this very similar, just like he did in game number 1. Playing a very straightforward style, recognizing right now that he might be going up against either Liberators or, for example, Banshees. Indeed, it is going to be that Liberator play, and we already do see the quick upgrade right here as well for our Terran player. Apparently Fusion Core, I was looking right there, apparently the Fusion Core was hiding here in the bottom right hand corner of the map. That does mean right now that uThermal will have that extended range on the Liberators, and that could actually become a bit of an issue, because Liberators can deal so much damage with that, because they can just simply bypass a lot of these Spore Crawlers. We do see Serral going up for a very quick lair. This does give him the opportunity to, for example, go for Hydralisk, or if he even needs to, he could, for example, go up to a Spire as well, because this is a rather big commitment here by the Terran player, but a single Liberator can shut down a ton of production. Here we go, first one already moving across the map. Right now, though, at the third base location, we see Zerg desperately trying to build up that drone count. Once again, the Hydralisk then coming in, as well as another evolution chamber here. But where exactly did that... There we go, the Liberator go. Advanced Ballistics, just a couple of seconds for finishing up. Zerglings will be able to scout out roughly what's going on, but by this moment in the game, Serral has no idea about this Fusion Core here in the bottom right-hand corner. And I do have to say, look at this. This is so sick. Like, this is such a tough position here for the Zerg player to deal with, because these units will just continuously take damage, and this is gonna shut down a lot of mining time. This is gonna hurt quite a bit. I think that Queen may just barely be in range. There we go, another drone does end up dying. uThermal now at the same time also gonna try and make a bit of a push here at the third base location, but I think that indeed with the rerouting there of the Liberator, that Queen is gonna be in a little bit of trouble, and uThermal is just trying to be a bit of a pain in the ass. I definitely do appreciate it. Apparently, all of the Hellions there at the third base location did end up dying, but while this is all going on, uThermal once again transitioned towards the 1-1 style. He's going into all of the mech-based armies, and he's also now transitioning towards that third command center as well. And while apparently one of the Liberators will end up dying, this is definitely a nice little bit of harassment that just simply buys uThermal a lot of time. I don't know if he necessarily meant to deal like only 2 drones here in damage, or 2, you know, workers here for his opponent in total. I guess that would make a third one there, but regardless, not a whole lot of damage here being done, but he buys himself a lot of time. I wonder if going for the Fusion Core this early on into the game and dealing only, you know, 3 workers here in damage is actually going to be enough. I'm not entirely sure. Serral now, however, loading in 2 Zerglings as well as 3 Banelings into a single Overlord. Nematized Carapace only just now getting started, so I guess it's a bit of an awkward situation, but eventually I think this one will try to make its way towards that main base. The Zergling's gonna try and head over to the third right now as well of uThermal. They will be met, however, with a couple of Hellbats, and once again, right, one of those moves, if the Hellbats weren't there, SCVs would have gone down in, you know, dozens of numbers. It's actually kind of crazy. But once again, both players just continuously testing the waters, trying to figure out what kind of damage they can potentially deal. And if, you know, the opponent messes up at one place, you can potentially win the game right then, right there. Apparently, though, these Zerglings will die here for the time being as well. Banelings now also being morphed in here at the top position of this map. I think they may very well be heading over towards the third base. And you gotta keep in mind, now that Nematized Carapace is done, Serral does have the option as well to go for a push here inside of the main base of the Terran player. Hellions and Hellbats now moving across the map. Double Thors once again making the same move as well. Where's that Overlord inside? Where'd it go? Oh, it's right over there. Okay, I was gonna say, where did the Overlord go? There's a single Zergling right here hiding by the Vespian Geyser. That one just sort of threw me off. But right at this point in time, while the Thors are trying to do a little bit of damage, the Banelings are going in right now into the third base here of this Terran player, dealing a huge amount of damage. At the same time, we do see a bunch of those units going down right now as well, right here at the fourth base location of the Zerg player. SCVs ended up dying with 10 of them in total, and this Overlord once again is also now going in for the move. We see the Liberator trying to do a little bit of damage here inside of the main base, halting that progress. But so far, it seems like the Thors will be forced to return home, and Serral has gotten the upper hand of one of those engagements once again. Here we go, though. Big drop going down inside of the main base. The Banelings are actually connecting with a lot of those units. Zerglings are also coming out, but apparently this is going to be, once again, loaded back up into the Overlord, and the Overlord lives for a little while longer. While this is going on, though, apparently Zerg realizes the situation that he's in, and Serral is going to force this fourth command center to get cancelled or maybe even killed. I love this. Serral is playing this hyper defensive style, and while in game 1 he took a little bit of damage here and there, in particular, you know, once the Zerg player got to a maxed out state and he threw all of his army across the map, I felt like up to that point Serral played it pretty much perfectly, and we see something very similar here in this game. A lot of workers were killed, however, this time around for Zerg, and that just simply puts him at such a huge economic advantage. Once again, 8 SCVs go down there with just a handful of Zerglings trying to deal a little bit of damage, and while uThermal is trying to be in the same situation that he was in previously, he's gonna go up against the Hive here shortly. He's once again gonna go up against the Zerg player that's got a lot of economy and can essentially do whatever you want, and I don't think you want to give Serral that opportunity where he can just sort of play his own game. I mean, too many SCVs went down here. That does mean that this push here for Serral is going to be a scary one. Zergling is going to try and run into that natural as well, and there is nothing really there to defend it, but here we go. Banelings once again going to try and connect with as many of those units as they possibly can. Hellbats dropped off on top of all of these Hydralisks, because while this is going on, the Zerglings are going to town here in the mineral line as well, and Serral will be able to pick up game 3 in dominating fashion. Alrighty, so the next one is going to be on Battle on the Boardwalk, and this is one of the maps that is actually pretty interesting. I've seen a lot of funny little cheeses on this map already, even though it's not been out for that long. There's a lot of cheese potential on this map, and I wonder if maybe Serral is feeling a little bit ballsy once again. For those of you unfamiliar, in the bottom right hand corner, there's gonna be a gold base, and of course the same can be said for the one in the bottom left hand corner. This is one of those bases that we see Protoss players and Terrans take quite a bit more often than Zerg, just because there's this nice little alleyway leading, and it's kind of funny here, this is like very un-StarCraft-esque. Anyway, like we haven't really seen something like this before in the map pool. It is leading down from the main base straight towards the gold base, and while Zerg usually doesn't really want to take it early on, just because it halts the creep spread a ton, and you know, it makes it hard to actually take that map control that Zerg is so very reliant on. This is something that the Terran player may very well be able to go for. Apparently though, Serral not going for anything hyper aggressive just yet, simply going for that hatchery on the low ground, and he may be able to follow this up with a spawning pool as well. There we go. Are you gonna get it? There we go, beautiful. And then shortly after, I wouldn't be surprised if you see that extractor going down here too. uThermal, however, I mean, he played a solid straight-up game in game number 1, didn't really take any damage, and eventually overwhelmed his opponent. Game 3 was kinda similar in the sense that he tried playing a same game, or at the very least, he tried going toe-to-toe in macro with his opponent, but he ended up losing, like, you know, 24 SCVs, and that was just simply too much. I mean, you give Serral a finger, right, and he grabs your entire hand. It's kind of wild. Like, this guy is definitely not someone you want to mess with, because if you give him a slight little edge, he's going to be able to push that to the victory very, very rapidly. And I think that uThermal recognizes that as well. He cannot go around losing 20 plus workers once again for essentially free without dealing any damage himself. Unless he manages to do a lot of damage himself, which so far in this series hasn't really happened. Serral is just gonna, you know, take the victory and run away with it. It's kind of wild, actually. Like, I've been quite impressed with the way that Serral is playing pretty much all of the matchups. He doesn't really take any damage in earlier parts of the game. I mean, up to like the 10-minute mark, he usually doesn't lose any more than, say, 5 or so workers. Obviously, he's still human, believe it or not, and he may mess up here and there, but usually he just really has spot-on defenses, and he doesn't really take any worker losses whatsoever. Now, Queens here are going to come out in just a second. This Reaper is rather early. Zergling's just simply microing back, trying to make sure that none of them die. Look at this silly back and forth. But now that the 6 links gone, the Queens will indeed come out as well, and no units actually ended up dying. Well, I guess one worker, or one unit actually was killed there by uThermal, but regardless, like, another one of those funny little moments where both players are just testing the waters. They're trying to figure out what it is they're going up against and if they can deal any kind of early game damage. Starport once again coming in. uThermal, however, will be going once again for the reactor right here on that factory as well. But Serral knows exactly what's going on, and while he hasn't quite seen the starport just yet, I think that he can sort of make that assumption right now. And so far, I mean, his play against both Liberators as well as Banshees has been very solid. Zergling and a Reaper apparently feeling, I was gonna say, okay, no, apparently they are feeling pretty peaceful, not really going for any kind of damage there whatsoever, and uThermal will apparently allow that Zergling to pass, as it will more than likely be picked up here by the Hellions in just a second. Reaper now once again, though, trying to get a little bit of scouting information. This is nicely done here by uThermal, though. He's figuring out exactly how much gas his opponent is on. He knows that there's not going to be a super quick lair or anything along those lines. And with that, of course, the cloaking field once again for the Banshees will come into play. Third hatchery already finished up. A lot of queens going down right now as well for Serral. It's actually kind of interesting. We haven't seen Zerg players really like delay their... Okay, here we go. This is a bit of a switch up right here. But we haven't really seen Zerg players delay their upgrades for the longest time. And now recently, we see the Evo chambers coming in so much later than we used to for such a long time. Drones trying to scramble away though for these Hellions that do not want to become the drone barbecue. And they don't want to be eaten by these Hellions. But there is a Roach Warren coming in right now. This could just be a response to, of course, the play that we saw here from the Terran player already. Just simply making a little bit too many Hellions in this series so far. So maybe Serral's like, okay, I don't really want to take any damage from any of you. But at this point in the game, there's no Spore Crawlers to be seen anywhere. Serral does not have a lair either. So these Banshees, with their cloaking field, can actually start dealing quite a bit of damage. I would be surprised, though, if that is going to be the case. I mean... Serral is simply powering out the drones. There is a Spore coming in right now. I don't think he knows what's going on exactly. Oh no, he did end up seeing exactly what's going on. Okay, I was gonna say he's just waiting with those Spore Crawlers until the very last second. Not even getting them at every base either. Such a cheeky little play. It's kind of crazy though. Like, he only starts them up at like the 4-minute and 50-ish second mark, just because he knows that the chances of his opponent heading towards the natural first are pretty much 100%. It's pretty crazy. How much of a risk-reward we're talking right here. But anyways, Lair is started up right here. No Spore to be seen just yet in the main base. But the Evolution Chamber here is gonna come in eventually. And I think that Serral is looking to close out this series with a solid, straightforward macro game. Already building up to 50 plus drones at this point. And we see something very similar here though for uThermal. I mean... He recognizes that in game number 3, he just ended up taking too much eco damage. He's apparently decided that he doesn't want to do that again. He's just going to continue his own playstyle here. Look at that little dove, though. Beautiful little bird. Is that a dove? Probably not. Oh, look, he found a friend. I love the map decorations in StarCraft 2, though. I mean, look, there's beach chairs on this map. I know there's, like, Hellions and fire buggies and whatnot trying to deal damage, but there's also beach chairs. And ask yourself, what is more important? Exactly, the beach chairs, for obvious reasons. Water, actually, with fishes in there as well. Absolutely gorgeous. So far, though, solid defense once again here by the Zerg player. Not really taking any damage whatsoever, although his creep spread was halted there for a little bit. Only a single worker was killed, and that worker that was killed was actually in favor here of the Zerg player. Now, this actually was a little bit of an opening right here that uThermal may have been looking at. Not a whole lot of defenses here available at the third base location, but right now Zerg is going to make a move here across the map. I like this a lot. Look at that. The creep tumor actually now spreading creep towards this other side as well, allowing the queens to join in here too. That's so cool. That means that all of a sudden we see a transfuse going down on these roaches. Roaches will be met, however, with a banshee as well as a lot of hellions, hellbats, and then also the cyclones in the back. They deal so much damage in such a short amount of time, but I love this cute little move. That is so cool, right? Not only does this allow him to get a fort base up and really not take any damage whatsoever, because he forces back all of these hellions, but queens just simply moving into the engagement as well. It's one of those things that we will probably see become a rather standard build the longer that this map is going to be around. Hydra then once again coming in. We see +1 a missile also researched here for Serral. And once again, we see the double armory also coming in here for uThermal. So far though, great player by uThermal, not missing a beat just yet, just slowly building up his own economy, not risking any units in there either, rather than just simply right-clicking them into a mineral line. uThermal is being very, very patient with this army, and rather than going for the double Thor drops, this time around we only see a single Thor drop coming in, and a more heavy focus on siege tanks here instead. Thor's definitely capable of dealing quite a bit of damage. There we go. Going to be able to take out a queen very rapidly as well. Zergling's apparently now going after these rocks as well, but uThermal, once again though, I mean, he's doing a good job, right? Look at this. He's already at 70 plus workers. He hasn't really taken any damage. He's going to be able to max out in about a minute or so from now, and while once again he's going to go up against that hive tech based Zerg army, I think that uThermal is actually feeling pretty confident in this match because he hasn't taken any damage. I like these walls as well, right? It's little moves like this that prevent the banelings from dealing a lot of damage. I mean, other than the fact that, of course, you could actually trap your own SCVs if the banelings run all the way around, but you do have to respond there very rapidly as well. But while uThermal hasn't been capable of really getting a whole lot of damage done himself, he didn't really need to. With the strategy that he focused on, he just simply was continuously expanding, and he didn't really need to worry about all too much damage here either. Now, once again, though, the Vipers are currently coming out, and Serral is already at Hive Tech, getting himself the upgrades once again. Very straightforward build here so far by the Zerg player, not really taking any damage here whatsoever. And he's going to be able to maybe nibble away at this barracks here for a little while, but uThermal apparently is going to prevent these links from dealing a ton of damage here in the earlier part of the game. Love the fact as well, actually, that he's loading in a lot of these Hellbats into the medevacs. It's such a cool move because it allows you to simply drop all of these Hellbats right on top of all of the Hydralisks. And of course, the medevacs are not nearly as high of a threat as some of these other units here on the ground. So that means that usually the Zerg has to manually target fire down the medevacs. So you never really know if they have any units in them in the first place anyway. I like that move a lot. Spire now coming in as well. There's a lot of Vipers, however, already available here as well for the Zerg. And now with Roaches also joining in here, apparently uThermal though has decided that he just simply wants to put a siege tank there. Apparently this base will be defended here for now as well. Once again though, 5 Overlords ready to go for a drop. There's now also a double medevac, or a single medevac rather, going into that natural expansion here of the Zerg, going for the double Hellbat drop. Single Vipers, or a single set of Vipers now also trying their best to yank away a couple of units out of the main engagement. And while 5 drones end up dying there, at this point in the game, it's not that big of a deal. And the Hellbats will indeed be deflected here for the time being, but uThermal is currently maxed out. He's got a lot of army, he's got a very well upgraded force here as well, and Zerg is still kind of stuck on this roach-based army here too. Here we go though, looks like Zerg may very well want to engage. The Vipers are currently caught off guard and they are not quite in that engagement. That does mean indeed that Zerg will be forced to back off, but we are in a bit of a split map scenario already, right? I mean, neither player really wanted to go for the engage. Zerg now, however, setting up a massive run by here. He could go for the surround on all of these units. Beautifully played once again, trying to abduct a bunch of those units. And apparently though, Zerg doesn't really want to take the main engagement just yet, that he is gonna go after the command center here that was just acquired here by the Terran player. It just barely is gonna stay alive, however, and the Zerg, I mean, while he's desperately trying to target fire it down, beautiful play there by uThermal, keeps that command center alive, kills a whole lot of the units as well, and apparently he will be able to once again go for the counterattack. And this, you know, reminds me of game number 1 so much. Beautiful push here by uThermal. He picked up an advantage in game 1 and he immediately ran away away with it in that match as well. There's a lot of siege tanks now available. Gonna be able to go for the slow push here on creep. Viper's already starting to run pretty low, and actually one of them is just about to fall. Desperately trying to get a little bit more energy there on some of those units as well. Siege tanks, though, still being abducted. There's still a lot of Terran, however, available, and their rallying units are now also moving across the map. Siege tanks trying their very best to shell away at these units at a little bit of a distance. Hellions now also going after the mineral line here, trying to pull the Zerg player apart. Vipers once again, though, accumulating energy here too, and Serral does still have a maxed out army here. I wonder if uThermal needs to yeah, indeed. Like, if he wants to pull back, I think right now would be a great moment to go ahead and do so, because he's no longer maxed out, and I think that waiting may very well be the better option, but apparently Zerg doesn't want that right now. Vipers abducting a bunch of these units once again. However, the Vikings in the air just picked them off one by one very rapidly, and Vipers are not a particularly cheap unit. +3 missile right now, just about to finish here for the Zerg player. Greatest Spire now also done. Not really a whole lot of wiggle room, though, to maybe get those Brute Lords out just yet. And while there's not a lot of Vikings out, if there were to, I think that they could actually easily build, you know, and they could easily kill all of those Brute Lords in just a matter of seconds. Once again, though, the spread right here on the siege tanks is absolutely insane. Hellions trying to connect with all of these Hydralisks, and I wonder if there's not a little bit too much Terran. Look at this beautiful push by uThermal, playing it slow and steady, and apparently that allows him to win game number 4 in a very, very nice way. I like that a lot. Well, this is it. This is going to be the final match in this best of 5 series, no matter what. Both players so far trading blows. uThermal definitely showing what he's made of, but the final game in this match is going to be on Ascension to IRLE. And spawning in the bottom right hand corner, we have the Zerg player looking dominant so far in the series, but he doesn't seem to be able to close out the game. He is known as Serral, and his opponent in the cross position, playing with the red Terran SCVs, we have none other than uThermal. Quite interested there, though. It seems like Serral's late game may just be lacking a little bit here and there, right? I mean, we could see him dominate the earlier part of the game. Mid-game looked extremely strong, but then the Terran player, you know, maxes out and he just sort of dies. I'm not entirely sure why he was going for the massive amount of Dropper Lords either. They didn't really seem to do all that much damage, and I wonder if there's maybe a bit of a leak in his play that he may very well need to fix, because he definitely does strike me as the more dominant player in this series so far, but he still ended up losing 2 games, right? And uThermal, I mean, so far, not really playing any kind of cheeky builds. Once again, though, he's going for that command center on the low ground. I love this. This is such a good mind game, right? I mean, the chances of your opponent going for that, you know, once again, the Ravager Rush at this point in the series is pretty much 0 to none. So uThermal decides to go ahead and just simply build up the command center on the low ground once again. It takes some balls to go ahead and do that. Definitely not the easiest decision to go for. We also now see the follow-up, of course, of once again the refineries and then the barracks as well. It's so cheeky. But this time, however, just to make sure that he doesn't die to a Ravager Rush once again, uThermal decides to send out a single SCV just to figure out roughly what it is he is going up against. And of course, you will shortly figure out that it is indeed going to be a very standard hatch gas pool here from his opponent as well. Nice little economy lead there, though, by uThermal. Of course, getting the double mules out earlier on into the game definitely gives you a nice little boost in that eco. We'll have to keep an eye out, though, on exactly what Serral plans to go for, because so far he's actually leaving the drones inside of that gas geyser. That is definitely not going to be an accident. That is something that he plans on doing here on purpose. So I wonder if that means that he just simply wants to go for the Nematized Carapace. Or maybe that he's got something else in store for us here in this final match of this series. I mean, Zerging speed is currently coming in. Metabolic boost upgrade is great. But lately, with the slight Overlord speed buff, I mean, we saw that with the new multiplayer patch, Nematized Carapace has become a lot less popular to get. And already, though, we see him banking up to close to his second 100 gas count. I wonder if that means that he's going to be getting it here anyway. Yeah, there we go. Apparently, Serral. Okay, so this is what I think is going through Serral's head right now. And obviously, this is just speculation, right? He didn't go for Nematized Carapace in the previous games until much later. I wouldn't be surprised if he feels like he's the stronger macro player and that he just doesn't want to die to anything silly. Right? It's a rather expensive upgrade. It's 100 minerals, 100 gas, and a bunch of lost mining time and whatnot as well right there on minerals. So it costs you about 4 or so drones in the earlier part of the game. But it's obviously a very helpful upgrade. if your opponent is gonna be going for a cheeky little build, because you can scout out exactly what's going on. It could also be a response to the fact that uThermal so far has been going for a quick Viking, even when he's playing Banshees and Liberators pretty much every game. So that all of a sudden allows these Overlords to very quickly, you know, get on out of there if they need to. And once again, we see that very quick 1-1-1 style here for uThermal. Not really mixing it up just yet, just simply trying his very best to play his best strategy here as well, and I do think that that is going to be the correct option. Regardless though, right now, Serral will be able to get all of his Overlords out of there if he needs to, and that means that, well, with his Reaper going down, he's gonna be aware of exactly what it is he's gonna go up against. This is such a cheeky move as well, look at that. We see the tech lab right now researching the cloaking field upgrade, but then there's a Liberator coming in as well. This is mostly just to throw off the Zerg. Interestingly enough, though, in this particular combination, you kind of just force the Zerg to make a bunch of Spore Crawlers anyway. Serral, though, this time around, apparently is going to feel confident enough to throw up the Baneling Nest instead of the Roach Warren. A little bit of a mix-up there as well. I'm not entirely sure what caused that one. I guess it's mostly just a matter of preference, and I guess he wants to make sure that he can play both of the styles, of course, at the highest level of play here just fine. Zerglings now, however, found that third command center. And that's a big deal. I mean, these Hellions are going to be caught out of position for just a little bit. I think they will prevent these Lynx from really dealing the massive amounts of damage to that command center that they wanted to. But this is still a nice little bit of scouting information right here for the Zerg. Knowing exactly what it is the Terran player is going for is going to make this game significantly easier. They're just about to finish up. Double Armory once again coming in. SCVs building them back to back there. Absolutely beautifully done. And while, once again, ooh, this is actually a cheeky little move there. Trying to get the surround there. Not gonna happen, though, and Zerg is gonna be able to pick up the majority of those Hellions. Once again, uThermal is gonna try and poke in there and deal a little bit of damage here and there. But none really gets dealt. And I feel like that's kind of the theme throughout this series so far. I mean, a single worker killed here by the Zerg player, and that's about it. If you want to play a defensive Zerg style, and you can manage all of the different attacks all at once, I would highly recommend playing the way that Serral is playing right here. It seems to just simply be on point. I mean, the man is not really missing a beat. It's very hard to actually drone up as greedily as he does right here, without really taking any damage whatsoever, but he seems to have the perfect amount of units every single time. More and more factories now coming in as well, though, and uThermal, on the other hand, I definitely would recommend trying to copy his style as well, because while he's, you know, trying to do a little bit of damage, even if he doesn't deal any damage, he buys a lot of time while doing the damage to try and go up to a third command center, and I quite like that little move as well, right? He's just essentially buying himself a little bit of time, and right now, apparently, he's found a bit of an opener right here. Banshee is going to try and pick up a couple of those workers, 5 already going down. Lynx now also making their way towards that natural expansion, but that was a nice little bit of harassment right there by uThermal. The first time that he found a crack in the armor right there of his Zerg opponent, and all of a sudden the worker counts are evened up significantly more. Apparently, though, a handful of Zerglings also picked up 3 SCVs there in just a matter of seconds. But I like the way that uThermal is playing this too, though. Just to clarify my previous point, while he's trying to do economic damage, right, and he's going for the Liberators, the Hellions, and all the other units as well, he's also building up that third command center, and with that, the economy. So rather than just focusing on just dealing damage and trying to win the game that way, he's trying to do some damage, but he's also not really taking a whole lot of risk there, just because he's getting himself the third base up already. It's a smart little move. Infernal Pre-Ignited now also coming in here for the Terran player. And once again, with the 1-1 upgrades just about to finish up, I wonder if we will be seeing a bit of a push here from the Terran in just a second. Once again, double Thors, of course, coming out. They're going to have their very great single target damage output here in just a little bit. Liberator still available as well to maybe be a bit of a nuisance here once the next base eventually does go up. But once again, right, while we do see, once again, the servos upgrade and whatnot being researched, nothing all too crazy just yet. Zerg is going to go up against a pretty powerful force, but he also just scouted brilliantly exactly what it is he's going to go up against. And this is going to be an important little engagement here. This can really go either way. If the Metavex die, that's going to be the end of this push for sure, but Zerg is going to have to be careful because his units can very quickly take care of these armies as well. Thor's desperately trying to connect her to the best of their abilities, but so far not really getting the value. One of the Medifex does end up dying, and with that, all of the Hellbats as well. And while one Thor will live to tell the tale, his brother did end up dying there in combat, and Serral, once again, doesn't really take any kind of critical damage. But he is once more, actually, now going for a... This is interesting, so it's a bit of a mix-up, right? He's once again gonna go for the 5 Overlords here, or a bunch of Dropper Lords. Yeah, it's 5 of them in total. Instead of going for the very quick hive though, so this is a little bit different. There's gonna be no Vipers available, still a lot of siege tanks that he will have to deal with, but this is gonna be like a Hydra Ling based army, where he's also gonna have the option to go for like a Dropper Lord follow-up, and here we go. Zerg is apparently smelling blood. He wants to try and go for this engagement. Siege tanks dealing a huge amount of damage, but the Banelings are connecting with a ton of these units as well. Hellions now, however, are going to be able to start roasting away at these Hydras as well. Of course, the Hydras are very vulnerable here. So far, though, with the Zerglings attacking those depots there at the top, I don't really know if exactly that was the engagement that he was looking for. But while the scans will indeed confirm that for now, Zerg is going to push back, they are loaded into the Overlords. And these Overlords are going to try and head towards that main base here of the Terran player. Fourth base is going to be in a little bit of trouble as well. uThermal is all on top of that. But continued harassment right now is going to be rather annoying here for the Terran player, because this army here is not particularly mobile. So far, this has completely been... Oh man, this is completely unscouted. What a beautiful move by Serral. Decided to go for the drop here in the main base, completely throwing his opponent for a whim there, because this counterattack that the Terran player is going for, that's won him the game every single time so far, is not gonna work out against this many units inside of that main. Siege tanks will indeed be necessary there, but in the meantime, of course, if you unsiege all of them, Zerg is just simply gonna start fighting your third and your fourth base there instead. And if you manage to clean up a Terran's, you know, a Terran's fighting force, and of course, with that, the production as well, this can go really scary, really fast. Siege tanks right here at the front, though, looking very, very vulnerable. So far, though, Terran is going to be able to clean that up, but not without taking a huge amount of losses here as well. I mean, the supply counts definitely aren't lying. Zerglings will be able to surround those siege tanks in just a matter of seconds. Banelings are going to try and connect to all of these units as well. Command center now also burning down slowly but surely. We do see the planetary fortress trying to get morphed in here as well at the fourth base location. Reinforcing siege tank just barely will be able to hold the front door, but I think that they may just simply be a little bit too much Zerg. Look at the amount of SCVs dying at this point in the game. 27 in just a matter of seconds. And Serral ends up obtaining the victory in this best of 5 series, but just barely by the skin of his teeth. I love that though. Just mixing up a little bit, right? I mean, he went for a very similar looking style, but he didn't go for the hive nearly as quickly. And that all of a sudden allowed him to go for a big push that just simply threw his opponent off. Once uThermal held on with the first engagement, he tried going for a bit of counterattack damage, and then all of a sudden, the drop in the main base completely threw him off. I hope you enjoyed watching this series here. If you did, make sure you hit that like button down below. If you want to see more, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get a notification as soon as I upload more. But other than that, I want to thank you for watching. Have an amazing day, okay? Do not forget to smile. Thank you as well to all of the Patreon supporters. You guys are awesome. Thank you for making this possible. But I will see you all in the next one.